Commander Jake Sullivan watched through the thick glass windows of his ship's bridge as space itself seemed to tear open. The black void twisted and bent until a massive alien vessel appeared where nothing had been moments before. The ship was huge, easily 3 times bigger than Jake's own warship, and its surface looked like it was made from some kind of living crystal that glowed with soft blue light. Jake had been commanding the Earth Defense Fleet flagship for 5 years now, but he had never seen anything like this. His hands gripped the metal railing in front of him as he stared at the alien vessel. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations, their fingers moving quickly over glowing control panels. The bridge was filled with the quiet hum of electronics and the soft beeping of sensors. "Sir, we're getting a communication request," said Alex Turner from his position at the communication station. Alex was young, maybe 25, with short, brown hair and nervous eyes. He had joined the fleet 2 years ago, fresh from the academy. "It's coming from that ship." Jake turned away from the window. "Put it through to the main screen." The large display at the front of the bridge flickered to life. What appeared made several crew members step backward. The alien was taller than any human, with a body that looked like a giant insect. Its skin was dark green and shiny, like polished metal. But the most disturbing thing was its eyes. They were huge and made up of thousands of tiny lenses, like the eyes of a fly, but much larger. When it moved its head, the light reflected off those eyes in ways that made Jake's stomach feel sick. "I am High Counselor Zefter of the Galactic Council," the creature said. Its voice came through the ship's speakers with a strange echo, as if it was speaking from very far away. "I speak for the 7 species that rule this galaxy." Jake stepped forward. "This is Commander Jake Sullivan of the Earth Defense Fleet. You're in human space. State your business." The alien's head tilted slightly, and those terrible eyes seemed to focus on Jake through the screen. "Your species has broken the sacred expansion protocols. You have settled on 14 worlds without permission from the Council. You have developed faster-than-light travel without our guidance. Most serious of all, you have refused to accept Council authority over your actions." From across the bridge, Captain Ryan Brooks moved to stand beside Jake. Ryan was older, in his 50s, with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. He had been Earth's chief diplomat for 10 years and had dealt with first contact when the aliens had revealed themselves 30 years ago. "High Counselor, humanity has always been willing to discuss our expansion with the Council. We've sent numerous requests for meetings that have been ignored." Zefter's antenna twitched. "The Council does not negotiate with unauthorized species. We rule. You obey. There are no other options." Jake felt his jaw tighten. "And if we refuse? Then you will be removed." The alien's voice remained calm, but there was something cold in those words that made the bridge temperature seem to drop. "The Council has decided that humanity is a rogue civilization. You represent a threat to galactic order and peace." Chief Engineer Monica Davis looked up from her station. Monica was small and thin, with red hair tied back in a tight ponytail. Her hands never stopped moving over her controls, always checking systems and running calculations. "Sir, I'm detecting at least 50 more ships appearing on the edge of Ulm. Our sensor range, they're big." Jake kept his eyes on the screen. "What exactly are you demanding?" "You have 72 standard hours to comply with the following terms," Zefter said. "First, you will surrender all military vessels to Council forces. Second, you will abandon all 14 colony worlds and return to your home system. Third, you will relocate your entire population to reservation worlds that the Council will provide. Fourth, you will submit to permanent Council oversight of all human activities." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of electronics. Jake could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. "And if we refuse? Then every human in the galaxy will be eliminated." Your species will be removed from existence. This is not a negotiation. This is a final warning. Ambassador Lisa Carter stepped forward from where she had been standing near the back of the bridge. Lisa was in her 40s, with dark hair and intelligent brown eyes. She had been working with alien cultures since first contact and knew more about galactic politics than anyone else in human space. High Counselor, surely there must be some way to resolve this peacefully. Humanity has never threatened council worlds or species. Zephyrd's head turned toward her with a quick, jerky movement. Your very existence is a threat. You reproduce too quickly. You adapt too easily. You ask too many questions. The galaxy has been peaceful for 5,000 years under council. Rule: we will not allow humans to disturb that peace. Jake stepped closer to the screen. You're talking about genocide. We are talking about necessary pest control, the alien replied without emotion. You have 72 hours. The screen went black. Through the bridge windows, Jake watched the massive alien vessel fade away into hyperspace, leaving only empty space where it had been. But the sensors still showed those 50 other ships waiting at the edge of human territory. Alex Turner's voice was shaky when he spoke. Sir, we're receiving emergency transmissions from all 14 colony worlds. They've all received the same ultimatum. Monica Davis looked up from her calculations. Commander, based on the energy readings from that ship, their weapons are at least 100 years ahead of ours. If they have 50 more ships like that, I know, Jake said quietly. He turned to face his crew. These men and women had served with him for years. They trusted him to make the right decisions. But what decision could be right when the choice is between slavery and death? Lisa Carter moved to his side. Jake, I've studied council history for decades. They've done this before. 63 other species have faced the same ultimatum. None of them survived as free civilizations. What happened to them? 23 species chose to fight. They were completely destroyed. 40 species chose to surrender. They were moved to reservation worlds where they slowly died out over a few generations. The council calls it natural population decline, but the statistics tell a different story. Ryan Brooks crossed his arms. So we're damned either way. Jake stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, on 14 different worlds, millions of humans were going about their daily lives. Children were going to school. Families were eating dinner together. Scientists were making discoveries. Artists were creating beautiful things. All of that would end in 72 hours unless he made the right choice. But what was the right choice when both options led to extinction? Sir? Alex Turner was looking at him expectantly. What are your orders? Jake took a deep breath. He thought about his daughter Emma, who was studying medicine on New Geneva Colony. He thought about his brother Carl, who was farming on Haven World with his family. He thought about the millions of humans who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars. The Council had made one critical mistake in their ultimatum. They had studied human history and seen the wars, the conflicts, the violence. But they had misunderstood what they were looking at. They saw chaos where they should have seen something much more dangerous. They saw aggression, but they missed the innovation that came from desperation. They saw conflicts, but they ignored how quickly humans could unite when facing a common enemy. They saw primitive weapons, but they didn't understand human adaptability. Most importantly, they had given humanity 72 hours to prepare. Alex, open a channel to Earth Command. Priority 1. Channel open, sir. Jake straightened his shoulders. This is Commander Sullivan. Execute Protocol 7. All human worlds are to implement immediate defense preparations. We have 72 hours to save our species. He paused and looked around the bridge one more time. And send a message to every human settlement in the galaxy. Tell them the Council has declared war on humanity. Jake smiled grimly. Tell them it's time to show these aliens what humans do when someone threatens our families. The Council chambers floated in the darkness of space around Nexus Prime, the ancient world that had served as the galaxy's capital for over 5,000 years. The massive station was built from materials that most species could not even name. Metals and crystals that had been gathered from dead stars and collapsed worlds. Inside the great circular chamber, 7 different species sat in their designated areas, each one representing billions of lives across hundreds of worlds. High. Counselor Ziefter stood at the center of the chamber, his tall insect-like body casting strange shadows under the blue lights. His compound eyes reflected the holographic displays that showed the current positions of Council fleets throughout human space. Around him, the other 6 Council members watched and listened as he spoke about the human problem. The ultimatum has been delivered, Ziefter announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. All 14 human colonies have received our terms. They have 68 hours remaining to surrender. Counselor Vexani shifted in her crystalline chair. She was a member of the Crystalline Collective, a species that looked like living glass sculptures. Her body was made of what appeared to be clear diamond, but it moved and changed shape like water. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Have the humans responded to our demands? They have sent several messages, requesting negotiations, Ziefter replied. These requests have been ignored as per standard protocol. There will be no negotiations with a rogue species. In the water-filled section of the chamber, Counselor Mordeep floated in his environmental suit. The Depth Lords were an aquatic species that looked like giant jellyfish, with tentacles that glowed with bioluminescent patterns. His species had ruled the ocean worlds of the galaxy for 3,000 years. What is the assessment of human military capabilities? Fleet Admiral Kordesh stepped forward from his position near the military displays. He was a member of the Talon Empire, a species of bird-like creatures with sharp beaks and claws that could cut through metal. His feathers were deep red and black, and his eyes were small and dark. The Talon Empire had served as the Council's primary military force for over 2,000 years. Our intelligence shows that humans possess only basic kinetic weapons and primitive energy shields. Their ships are crude constructions using outdated technology. How many vessels do they have? Asked Counselor Taishra. She was from the Serpent Collective, a species of snake-like beings that could grow to be 20 feet long. Her scales were green and gold, and she moved by coiling and uncoiling her lower body. Numbers can sometimes overcome superior technology. Kordash activated a holographic display that showed the entire human territory. Small red dots marked the locations of human ships and stations. Our count shows approximately 800 human vessels of various sizes. Most are civilian transports and cargo ships. They have perhaps 50 actual warships, and none of them are larger than our smallest patrol craft. The 6th Council member, Counselor Zenith, remained silent as always. The energy beings rarely spoke during council meetings, preferring to communicate through pure thought. Zenith appeared as a shifting cloud of bright blue and white light contained within a special force field. When energy beings did speak, it was usually to deliver important information or warnings. The 7th seat belonged to Counselor Kraktar of the Stone Walkers, massive creatures that looked like walking mountains. Kraktar was 12 feet tall and made of what appeared to be living rock. His species moved slowly, but were nearly indestructible. How many worlds have resisted the Council in the past century? He asked, his voice deep and rumbling like an earthquake. 47 species across 7 sectors have been brought under Council authority in the past 100 years. Vexani replied, consulting her data displays. None have resisted beyond the 3rd engagement. Most surrender after witnessing our initial demonstration of force. Zefta nodded his approval. The pattern is always the same. Species that attempt to expand without council permission are given the choice between submission and extinction. Those who choose to fight are quickly eliminated. Those who choose submission are relocated to appropriate worlds where they can live peacefully under council oversight. Mordeep's tentacles glowed brighter as he spoke. What makes the council members believe humans will be any different? Their technology is primitive, their numbers are small, and their territory is limited. Exactly, Kordash said, spreading his wings slightly in a gesture of confidence. I have positioned 3,000 ships throughout human space. Each vessel is equipped with weapons that can destroy human cities from orbit. Our shields can deflect anything their primitive weapons can produce. This will be over quickly. Counselor Taishra coiled and uncoiled thoughtfully. What about human psychology? Have we studied how they might react to our ultimatum? Zefta activated another display that showed human historical data. Our analysis indicates high emotional volatility and tribal fragmentation. Humans have spent most of their existence fighting among themselves. They show extreme aggression toward their own species over minor differences in beliefs or territory. This suggests they will be unable to unite effectively against external threats, Mexani added. When faced with overwhelming force, they will likely fragment into competing factions. Some will try to negotiate separately with us, others will attempt to flee, and others will fight uselessly among themselves. Kordash's eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction. Our psychological profiles suggest that humans will panic when they realize the hopelessness of their situation. They have never faced an enemy with such overwhelming technological superiority. Their morale will collapse within hours of the first engagement. Deep in the asteroid belt of the human system called Wolf 359, Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked alone. In her hidden research station, Elena had been studying council technology for 15 years, ever since she had recovered debris from a crashed alien probe. Her station was built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, completely invisible to most sensors. Elena's fingers moved quickly over her computer controls as she monitored council communications. Her equipment could intercept fragments of their quantum transmissions, though she could only understand about 30% of what she heard. What she was hearing now made her blood run cold. The council wasn't just planning to defeat humanity. They were planning to study human reactions during the process of extinction. They wanted to understand how humans would break psychologically so they could apply those lessons to future species. Elena had heard references to something called the Documentation Protocol. The council planned to record everything that happened. During the destruction of human civilization, they would study how human families reacted when their children were killed. They would analyze how human leaders made decisions under impossible pressure. They would measure how long human hope lasted when faced with certain death. Elena had also heard something else in those transmissions, something that made her hands shake as she typed her report. The council members were discussing their previous victories with casual indifference. They talked about the extinction of 63 different species like humans might discuss the weather. The gentle builders had been eliminated because they asked too many questions about council authority. The star singers had been destroyed because their music was considered potentially disruptive to galactic harmony. The dream weavers had been exterminated because they shared thoughts too freely between individuals. Elena's research had shown her something the council didn't know about themselves. They weren't peacekeepers. They were predators who had turned genocide into a carefully managed system. They allowed species to develop to a certain point, then destroyed them before they could become threats too. Council-powered Elena finished her report and transmitted it through hidden channels to Earth Command. Her message would reach human leadership in 6 hours, but she doubted it would change anything. How could 800 human ships fight 3,000 alien vessels that were centuries ahead in technology. As Elena prepared to transmit her data, she noticed something strange in the Council communications. There were references to previous human encounters that didn't match official first contact records. The Council had been watching humanity for much longer than 30 years. They had been studying human behavior, learning human weaknesses, preparing for this moment. But Elena also noticed something else. In all their discussions about human psychology and behavior, the Council members kept returning to one thing: human unpredictability. They had models and predictions for how humans would react, but their confidence seemed forced, as if they were trying to convince themselves as much as each other. Elena smiled grimly as she encrypted her final transmission. The Council had studied human wars and conflicts, but they had made one critical error in their analysis. They had looked at human history and seen chaos and violence. They had missed the most important pattern in human behavior. When humans were threatened with extinction, they didn't just fight back. They became something entirely different. Something that the galaxy had never seen before. Something that even the Council, with all their knowledge and power, might not be prepared to handle. President Nathan Clark stood behind his desk in the Oval Office, looking out at the Earth's blue sky through the bulletproof windows. It was early morning in Washington, but he had not slept in 18 hours. Behind him, his advisors moved quietly around the room, preparing for what might be humanity's final broadcast. Nathan had been president for 3 years, but nothing in his political career had prepared him for this moment. On his desk lay Dr. Elena Rodriguez's report, delivered just 2 hours ago through encrypted channels. The pages contained detailed analysis of Council communications, tactical assessments, and most disturbing of all, evidence that the Council had systematically eliminated 63 other species over the past 5,000 years. Nathan had read the report 3 times, and each reading made his anger burn hotter. "Mr. President, we're ready for the broadcast," said his chief of staff, Margaret Wells. Margaret was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes who had worked in government for 25 years. She had seen presidents deal with wars, economic disasters, and natural catastrophes, but never anything like this. Nathan straightened his tie and walked to his position in front of the cameras. In 15 minutes, his words would reach every human settlement across 14 worlds. Nearly 2 billion people would hear what he had to say. Many of them would die because of the decision he was about to announce. Across the city, Admiral. Karen Phillips sat in the Pentagon's war room, surrounded by displays showing the positions of human ships throughout the galaxy. Karen was 52 years old, with short black hair and 3 decades of military experience. She had fought in the Mars Rebellion 20 years ago and had commanded the Earth Defense Fleet since its creation. Her fingers moved across holographic controls as she prepared to implement Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was humanity's most classified military plan, developed in absolute secrecy over the past 15 years. It was based on a simple assumption. Someday, humanity would face an enemy so powerful that conventional military tactics would be useless. When that day came, humans would need to fight like cornered animals, using every resource and taking every risk necessary for survival. In underground facilities beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Marcus Webb supervised the activation of Project Lazarus. Marcus was a thin man in his 40s, with wild gray hair and eyes that rarely blinked. He had been working on alien technology since the first crash recoveries 30 years ago, reverse engineering devices that most scientists couldn't even understand. His team had spent decades preparing for this exact scenario. The Lazarus Protocol was humanity's deepest secret, hidden in ocean trenches, asteroid mining facilities, and abandoned space stations throughout human territory were automated manufacturing systems. These systems had been designed to activate only in case of species-level extinction threats. When triggered, they would begin producing self-replicating war machines guided by advanced artificial intelligence and human tactical doctrine. Lieutenant Colonel Chris Morgan stood in a briefing room at Fort Bragg, addressing his special operations teams. Chris was a large man with scarred hands and cold blue eyes. His units had been training for 15 years in scenarios that seemed impossible, fighting superior enemies in zero gravity, operating behind enemy lines with minimal support, using improvised weapons against advanced technology. His soldiers called themselves the Ghosts because they specialized in operations that officially never happened. Captain Nicole Pierce watched from the bridge of a construction ship hidden in the asteroid belt. Nicole was 38 years old, with red hair and engineering expertise that had earned her 3 advanced degrees. For 10 years, she had been overseeing the secret construction of hidden shipyards throughout human space. These facilities had been built inside hollowed-out asteroids, powered by fusion reactors, and equipped with manufacturing equipment that could produce warships from raw materials. President Clark's broadcast began exactly at noon, Earth time. His voice was calm and steady as he spoke to nearly 2 billion humans across 14 worlds. My fellow humans, wherever you are in the galaxy, I speak to you today about our survival as a species. 6 hours ago, representatives of the Galactic Council delivered an ultimatum to humanity. They have declared us a rogue civilization and demanded our complete surrender. They offer us a choice between slavery and extinction. Nathan paused, letting his words sink in. On New Geneva Colony, families gathered around their television screens in living rooms and community centers. On Haven World, farmers stopped their work to listen on portable radios. On mining stations throughout the asteroid belt, workers floated in zero gravity as they heard their president's words through their helmet speakers. The Council believes we will surrender because we are outnumbered and outgunned. They believe we will submit because they have superior technology and overwhelming force. They believe we will break because we are a young species that has never faced true extinction. Nathan's voice grew stronger as he continued. They are wrong about who we are. They have studied our history and seen our wars, but they have misunderstood what they observed. They see conflict and chaos where they should recognize something far more dangerous: humanity's ability to adapt, survive, and fight back against impossible odds. Admiral Phillips activated her command protocols as the president spoke. Across human space, hidden facilities began powering up. Weapon caches that had been sealed for decades opened automatically. Civilian ships received coded transmissions that would transform them into improvised warships. Most importantly, the quantum communication network that connected all human worlds came online, allowing instant coordination across interstellar distances. I want to be clear about what we face, Nathan continued. The Council has 3,000 warships positioned throughout our territory. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. They have eliminated 63 other species in the past 5,000 years. They do not negotiate, they do not show mercy, and they do not leave survivors. Dr. Webb's fingers flew over his control panels as manufacturing systems throughout human space began their work. The first Lazarus machines would be ready in 18 hours. These were not ordinary weapons, but adaptive artificial intelligences housed in self-repairing robotic bodies. Each machine was programmed with one simple directive: destroy all Council forces by any means necessary. But the Council has made one critical error in their assessment of humanity, Nathan said, and now his voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. They assume that because we are young and technologically inferior, we will fight like other species they have conquered. They expect us to use conventional tactics and surrender when we realize the hopelessness of our situation. Captain Pierce received confirmation signals from 27 hidden shipyards. Construction had begun on a new class of warship designed specifically for this moment. Fast, heavily armed vessels that could be built quickly from asteroid materials. These ships would not try to match Council technology. Instead, they would use human innovations like ramming attacks, suicide drones, and weapons that turned physics itself into a destructive force. They are about to learn that humans do not. Fight like other species, Nathan declared. When we are threatened with extinction, we do not simply resist. We become something entirely different. We become the thing that nightmares are made of. Engineer Tony Mitchell sat in a communications bunker beneath Denver, coordinating the activation of humanity's hidden assets. Tony was a quiet man who had spent his career building systems that no one knew existed. His quantum communication network would allow human forces to coordinate attacks across the galaxy in real time, something the Council believed was impossible. For a primitive species, Intelligence Chief Diana Foster opened classified files that revealed the true nature of the Galactic Council. For 30 years, she had been gathering evidence that the Council was not the peaceful organization it claimed to be. Her intelligence showed that they were genocidal conquerors who used fear and overwhelming force to maintain control over the whole galaxy. More importantly, her files contained detailed information about Council weaknesses, technologies, and strategic vulnerabilities. To every human listening to my voice, Nathan said, his words now carrying across 14 worlds, I give you this promise. We will not surrender, we will not submit, and we will not go quietly into extinction. The Council has declared war on humanity, not understanding that war is what we do best. Commander Peter Davis received his activation codes deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. Peter commanded the most secret facility in human space, a primary Lazarus manufacturing center. His automated systems were already producing the first generation of self-replicating war machines. These devices would spread throughout Council territory like a virus, adapting to enemy countermeasures and multiplying exponentially. I am declaring a state of total war, Nathan announced. Every human settlement, every ship, every resource is now dedicated to our survival. We will use every weapon, every tactic, and every advantage we can create or steal or improvise. Nathan paused one final time, looking directly into the camera. Behind him, through the window, Earth's blue sky was peaceful and beautiful. Somewhere out there, Admiral Kordash stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical displays that showed his fleet's approach to the human mining world of Kepler 442b. The planet was small and cold, orbiting a red dwarf star at the edge of human territory. According to Council intelligence, it had a population of 50,000 miners and support personnel. It would be the perfect place to demonstrate Council power and break human morale. Kordash's feathers rustled with satisfaction as he studied the planet's defenses. The humans had 3 small patrol ships in orbit and a basic planetary shield generator. His fleet consisted of 47 heavy cruisers, each one capable of destroying those patrol ships with a single weapon discharge. The attack would be over in minutes. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the planet, reported his communications. Officer, a young Talon warrior named Kiktar. Put it through, Kordash ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a human male in military uniform. The man had short gray hair and tired eyes, but his voice was steady when he spoke. This is Colonel Steve Adams, commanding officer of Kepler 442b Defense Forces. I'm ordering you to withdraw from this system immediately. Kordash laughed a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. Colonel Adams, you have 3 ships against my 47. Your planetary shields cannot withstand our weapons for more than a few minutes. I offer you one chance to surrender before we begin orbital bombardment. Colonel Adams looked directly at the camera. Admiral, I have a message for you from all the humans on this planet. He paused and then smiled grimly. Go to hell. The transmission ended. Kordash's eyes gleamed with predatory excitement. All ships, prepare for attack. Destroy the patrol vessels first, and begin bombardment of military targets. The Council fleet moved forward in perfect formation. Their weapons powered up, energy readings climbing toward maximum discharge levels. The 3 human patrol ships moved to intercept, their small engines pushing them toward the massive alien fleet. What happened next would be studied by military historians for generations. The first human ship, commanded by Captain Beverly Turner, accelerated directly toward Kordash's flagship. Beverly was 34 years old, with blonde hair and green eyes that showed no fear as her ship picked up speed. The Council weapons fired, their energy beams cutting through space toward the tiny human vessel. But Beverly's ship didn't try to dodge or return fire. Instead, it continued accelerating, using its fusion engine in a way that no sane pilot would attempt. The ship's speed increased far beyond normal operating parameters as Beverly overloaded every system she had. What is she doing? Kiktar asked, staring at his sensors. Kordash watched in growing alarm as the human ship approached relativistic speeds. All ships, concentrate fire on that vessel. Destroy it now. Energy beams from a dozen Council ships struck Beverly's patrol craft, but the tiny ship's momentum carried it forward even as its hull began to vaporize. At 97% light speed, the remains of Beverly's ship struck Kordash's flagship. The impact released energy equivalent to several nuclear weapons. The Council flagship's shields collapsed instantly, and its forward sections simply ceased to exist. Secondary explosions ripped through the massive vessel as its own weapons and power systems overloaded. Kordash found himself thrown across his bridge as artificial gravity failed. Emergency lights flickered on and off, while damage reports flooded the communication channels. His flagship, pride of the Talon Empire fleet, was crippled by a single human patrol ship. Impossible, he whispered, pulling himself upright. No species fights like that. A second human ship, commanded by Lieutenant Gary Walsh, had used the distraction to position itself among the Council fleet. Gary was 28 years old and had grown up on a farm before joining the Space Service. He understood that sometimes you had to sacrifice yourself to protect what mattered. Gary's ship detonated its fusion reactor while surrounded by Council vessels. The explosion destroyed 4 alien cruisers and damaged 8 others. The third human ship, piloted by Commander Lisa Hayes, rammed another Council vessel at maximum acceleration before her ship was destroyed by enemy fire dot in less than 10 minutes. The humans had eliminated or damaged 16 Council ships using only 3 small patrol craft. But the real shock came when Kodesh tried to contact the planet's surface to demand surrender. Colonel Adams appeared on screen again, but now he was standing in what looked like a bunker. Behind him, Kordash could see human soldiers moving with grim purpose. Admiral, I hope you enjoyed our opening act. Now let me show you what humans do when you threaten our families. Explosions began erupting across the planet's surface. But these weren't random detonations from panic or desperation. The humans had turned their entire mining operation into a weapon. Fusion charges that were normally used to break apart asteroids had been repositioned and linked together. When they exploded simultaneously, they created seismic shockwaves that traveled through the planet's crust. The planetary shield generator, which the Council had planned to destroy from orbit, suddenly increased its power output by 300%. The humans had been using only a fraction of its capability, hiding its true strength until the moment they needed it. Now the shield became bright enough to see from space as it deflected the Council's bombardment. But the most terrifying surprise came when the seismic charges triggered something the humans had been building for 5 years, an artificial volcano. Using mining equipment and geological engineering, they had created a massive underground magma chamber directly beneath their primary city. When the charges detonated, they opened a controlled pathway for the molten rock to reach the surface. The lava flow wasn't random or chaotic. The humans had carefully planned its path to flow through underground tunnels that led directly to their spaceport. Within hours, the molten rock would reach the surface and create a cloud of superheated gas and ash that would make orbital bombardment impossible. "They're insane," Kiktar whispered, watching the destruction on his screens. Kordash realized that the humans weren't trying to win a conventional battle. They were making their world uninhabitable to prevent the Council from claiming it as a prize. They would rather destroy everything they had built than let their enemies take it. Similar scenes were playing out across human space. On New Geneva Colony, Dr. Charles Miller had weaponized the terraforming atmosphere processors. The machines that normally created breathable air for human colonists were now producing toxic clouds that Council environmental suits couldn't filter. The aliens who landed on the planet found themselves choking on poisonous gas while human defenders attacked from underground tunnels. On Haven Colony, Mayor Susan Wright had organized the civilian population into a resistance network that turned the entire planet into a maze of traps and ambushes. Every building had hidden compartments where humans could hide and strike at occupying forces. Every road had concealed explosives that could be triggered remotely. Even the farm animals had been fitted with surveillance equipment that allowed human spotters to track alien movements. But the Council's greatest shock came when they reached the Sol system itself. Admiral Karen Phillips had positioned the Earth Defense Fleet not around Earth as expected, but spread throughout the asteroid belt in a complex formation that seemed to make no tactical sense. Captain Joe Martinez commanded a squadron of ships that had been modified in ways that violated every principle of safe space travel. Joe was 43 years old, with black hair and scars on his hands from years of working on ship engines. His vessels had been stripped of life support systems, crew quarters, and defensive armor. Everything had been sacrificed to create ships that could achieve impossible speeds using gravitational slingshots around Jupiter and Saturn. When the Council fleet entered the solar system, Joe's ships were waiting in carefully calculated orbits. As the alien vessels approached Earth, the human ships used planetary gravity to accelerate to velocities that no Council pilot would attempt. They struck the enemy fleet like guided missiles, their impacts creating explosions that could be seen. From Mars. Commander Linda Foster deployed swarms of drone fighters that operated on principles the Council had never encountered. Linda was 39 years old with short brown hair and a mind that understood both human psychology and alien technology. Her drones didn't just attack enemy ships randomly. They used pattern recognition software to identify the most important targets, then coordinated their attacks in ways that maximized psychological impact on enemy crews. The drones would target a ship's communication arrays first, isolating it from the fleet. Then they would attack life support systems, creating panic among the crew. Finally, they would strike the ship's weapons, leaving it defenseless, but still alive long enough for the crew to watch their fleet being destroyed around them. Most terrifying of all, the human vessels kept fighting even when critically damaged. Council ships that should have been destroyed continued to fire their weapons and ram enemy vessels. Human crews performed repairs in the middle of battle with desperate efficiency, welding hull breaches while under fire and rerouting power through damaged systems. The Lazarus machines began emerging from their hidden facilities throughout human space. 6 months had passed since the Council declared war on humanity, and High Counselor Zefter stood in the ruins of what had once been the galaxy's most secure military command center. The walls around him were blackened from explosions, and sparks fell from damaged ceiling panels. Half of his compound eyes had been destroyed in the attack that morning, leaving him partially blind and struggling to process the reports flooding in from across Council territory. The war that was supposed to last 3 days had become a nightmare. That consumed entire star systems. What remained of the Council's 3,000-ship fleet was scattered and demoralized, fighting a desperate defensive action against an enemy that seemed to multiply like a plague. Zefter's antenna twitched as he read the latest casualty reports, numbers so high that his mind struggled to accept them as real. Captain Jerry Collins stood on the bridge of his assault ship as it approached Nexus Prime, the ancient capital, world that had been untouchable for 5,000 years. Jerry was 36 years old, with brown hair and calm green eyes that showed no emotion as he watched the massive defense stations that protected the Council's home world. His task force consisted of only 12 ships, all of them cobbled together from salvaged alien technology and human innovation. "Sir, we're detecting over 200 defense platforms," reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Amy Parker. Amy was 25 years old, with short red hair and quick fingers that never stopped moving over her control panels. "Their weapons are charged and ready to fire." Jerry nodded calmly. "Execute Plan Trojan." The human ships suddenly stopped their approach and began broadcasting Council identification codes. These weren't stolen or hacked signals, but perfect recreations that had been developed by Dr. Rachel Moore's research team over the past 4 months. Rachel was a quiet woman in her 40s who had spent her career studying alien communication systems. Her breakthrough had come when she realized that Council technology relied on quantum encryption that could be broken, using human mathematical techniques the aliens had never encountered. The defense platforms hesitated, their automated systems confused by ships that appeared to be Council vessels but were approaching from the wrong direction. In that moment of confusion, Jerry's ships activated their real weapons. These weren't energy beams or kinetic projectiles, but something far more terrifying. Devices that manipulated the fundamental forces of physics. Each human ship carried a gravity distortion generator, technology that had been reverse engineered from Council equipment and improved using human understanding of theoretical physics. When activated, these devices created localized space-time anomalies that turned the defense platform's own mass against them. The massive alien structures collapsed into themselves, their metal and crystal construction crushed by artificial black holes that lasted only microseconds but released devastating amounts of energy. Intelligence. Officer Bruce Clark monitored Council communications from his position aboard Jerry's flagship. Bruce was a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes who had been intercepting alien transmissions since the war began. What he was hearing now through his encrypted channels made him smile grimly. "Sir, we're picking up panic signals from across the Nexus system. They're calling for reinforcements from sectors that no longer exist." The truth was that most of Council territory had already fallen to the Lazarus machines. These self-replicating artificial intelligences had evolved far beyond their original programming, spreading through Council space like a technological virus. The latest generation of Lazarus units could perfectly mimic any Council technology they encountered, infiltrating alien computer networks and turning the aliens' own systems against them. Admiral Sandra Hughes led the final assault on the Council chambers themselves. Sandra was 51 years old with silver hair and hard blue eyes that had seen too much death over the past 6 months. Her fleet had fought its way through 7 star systems to reach this moment, leaving a trail of destroyed alien worlds behind them. But Sandra's ships weren't just carrying weapons. They were carrying the uploaded consciousness of thousands of human volunteers who had chosen to become part of the Lazarus network. These digital humans retained their memories, personalities, and burning hatred for the aliens who had tried to exterminate their species. When they infiltrated Council computer systems, They brought with them all the creativity and viciousness that had allowed humanity to survive on Earth for millions of years. The Council's final defense was a massive space station that surrounded Nexus Prime like a metal moon. The structure had been built over 3,000 years and was armed with weapons that could destroy entire planets. But as Sandra's fleet approached, something impossible happened. The station's weapons turned on themselves, firing into their own power cores and weapon systems. The Lazarus machines had infiltrated the station's central computer and were systematically destroying it from within. But they weren't doing it randomly. They were taking their time, making sure that the council members inside could watch their ultimate fortress tear itself apart piece by piece. High Counselor Zefter received reports of the station's destruction, while hiding in an emergency bunker deep beneath the council chambers. Around him, the other surviving council members huddled in their environmental suits, their confidence shattered by months of impossible defeats. Counselor Vexani, her crystalline body cracked and dim, tried to understand what had gone wrong. How did they break our quantum encryption? How did they turn our own technology against us? This should have been impossible. Fleet Admiral Kordash, his feathers torn and bloody from the battles he had barely survived, spoke with a voice full of bitter knowledge. We underestimated them completely. We thought we were fighting a primitive species with basic weapons and simple tactics. Instead, we found something that the galaxy has never seen before. The truth was that humanity had not just adapted to alien technology. They had improved it in ways that the Council's rigid thinking could not comprehend. Where alien engineers saw fixed rules and established procedures, human scientists saw opportunities for innovation and improvement. Dr. Rachel Moore's team had cracked quantum encryption by approaching it from directions that alien mathematicians had never considered. Human physicists had weaponized gravity itself by treating Einstein's equations as engineering blueprints rather than theoretical abstractions. Most importantly, human strategists had turned war into an art form that combined cold logic with desperate creativity. The door to the council bunker exploded inward, and Admiral Sandra Hughes stepped through the smoke and debris. Behind her came human soldiers who had fought their way through the most secure facility in the galaxy. Their armor was scarred, and their weapons were cobbled together from alien and human technology. But their eyes burned with the satisfaction of absolute victory. Sandra looked down at the 7 alien beings who had ruled the galaxy for 5,000 years. Zefter tried to speak, his damaged translator making his words sound broken and weak. Admiral Hughes, surely we can negotiate some form of surrender. The Council is willing to discuss terms. Sandra's laugh was cold and without mercy. High Counselor, you had your chance to negotiate 6 months ago. You chose war instead. You chose to threaten our children and our future. You chose to try and wipe us from existence. Counselor Morgeep's tentacles glowed with desperate patterns as he tried to communicate. But surely you understand that total. War serves no one. The galaxy needs order, needs structure. Without the Council, there will be chaos. You're right, Sandra replied. The galaxy does need order, but it's going to be human order from now on. She activated her communication device, sending a signal that reached every human ship and station across the galaxy. This is Admiral Hughes. The Council has fallen. Nexus Prime is under human control. Begin Phase 7 immediately. Phase 7 was the final stage of humanity's war plan, the complete dismantling of Council civilization. Across 67 worlds, human forces began systematically destroying the infrastructure that had supported the alien empire for millennia. They weren't just conquering these worlds, they were erasing every trace of Council authority and replacing it with human systems. The Lazarus machines had been preparing for this moment, copying themselves into every Council computer network and communication system. When Sandra gave the signal, They began their final evolution. The artificial intelligences merged with human consciousness to create something entirely new. A hybrid intelligence that combined the best aspects of human creativity with unlimited computational power. President Nathan Clark's final address to the galaxy was broadcast from the former council chambers on Nexus Prime. He stood where High Counselor Zephyr had once delivered ultimatums to conquered species. But his message was very different. To all species throughout the galaxy, both free and enslaved, this is President Nathan Clark of the United Human Republic. The Galactic Council has been dissolved. Their reign of terror is over. Their systematic genocide of 63 civilizations has ended. Behind him, through the massive windows of the council chambers, the lights of human ships could be seen orbiting Nexus Prime. The ancient capital was now humanity's newest colony.